Aloha, Sandra Razieli here on a somewhat sunny day in my side yard in Maui. It might start raining though, we never know. But that doesn't matter because what we're going to do is play with our hips. And so today we're going to need just a place to stand and a place to sit. So this is not going to be necessarily a traditional yoga practice for hips, but a way to really help develop more mobility, agility in your hips. So ready to begin. Have your chair. Go ahead and grab the back of it like many times, just stretching the spine. Spine's connected to the hips, you know, it's all connected together. Take your hands and walk backwards. Bend your knees a little bit. Get the length in your spine. Breathe. Maybe straighten the legs, maybe not. That does have to do with hip mobility. All right? And then take a step forward and roll your shoulders. So we're not going to need the chair for a while, for a little bit at least. So you can put it by the side or walk somewhere else if you were sitting on a couch. Okay, so let's start by just feeling how the hips are at this moment with some circles. So take your hips forward, to the left, and back, and around, forward, left, back, and around, and then go the other way, back, and around. So our ability to move our hips is not just right here. It has to do with everything, especially the lower body. So how our feet move, how our ankles move, has a huge component on the hips, because if we don't have mobility in the ankles, we get jammed up higher up. So actually a way to start is to play around with our ankles a little bit. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to do first some ankle tilts. So start in mountain pose, and then take your left leg backwards, and then go ahead and tilt a few times to the side. So what I'm doing is I'm just opening up the outer ankle. Now if you've had injuries or if this feels like it hurts, skip the outer tilt. Same with any of the tilts. So we're going to tilt different directions. Then take your left foot a little wider and do an inward tilt. So just, you'll see my leg moves, but the intention is to try to make most of the movement from the ankle. Now take the left leg back, turn your foot out to the side, external rotation, and tilt there a few times. 4, I'm doing 4. And then turn your leg internally and tilt there. And go take your time. It doesn't have to be fast. It doesn't have to be super slow either. And then stand on both feet. Wiggle your toes. Maybe you feel a difference. For some people, this actually helps a lot with hamstring flexibility. Second side. So take your right leg back and go to the outer edge of the ankle, just tilting it out. Again, if there's some part of your ankle that you feel you've over tilted in your life, like you're always spraining it, you might want to hold back on the aggressiveness of your tilts. You might want to skip some areas. Eventually, those of you who practice Z-Health with me or with other people, what happens is you do diagnostics to figure out which tilts help you better. But for today, we're going to just get different areas. And if you have questions about that or want to know more about that diagnostic aspect of figuring out which exact tilts help more, let me know. So now we're doing the outer edge. The leg externally rotated, and now internally rotate the leg. A few times, back and forth. Good. I'm saying good to myself. I'm hoping saying good to you too. So take a little walk around. Feel the ankles. All right, so another aspect of if your ankles move, you can walk more easily on a variety of surfaces. Another good thing about it. All right, so now what I'd like you to do is to open up the another part of your lower extremity, which is the top of the foot. So stand in mountain pose, hips over heels, and then take your right foot back. And as you take your right foot back, turn the tops of the foot over so you press down on the top of the foot. And then bend your knee a few times up and down. Now if you find this is too intense, put a towel under the top of your foot. All right, we'll release that. Ooh, I like this one a lot. And then second side. Take your right foot back, open up the top of the foot. You might stand still, or you might bend the opposite knee up and down a few times. Good. All right, and then release. Wiggle your toes. Roll your shoulders round and round. And come back to your chair and sit on the front edge of the chair. Still a little bit more with the ankles. So sit in such a way that you can be on the front edge of the chair and take your, let's start with the left ankle over your thigh and give your ankle a rub. Just giving the tactile information is also very helpful for developing movement. And now, I'd like you to circle the ankle. Encourage the movement to come from the ankle itself, the area where you're touching. And then go ahead and reverse direction. So try not to get the toes too involved in this, just the ankle. So clearly, you can do this really anywhere. If you're hanging out at home, watching TV, sitting in a chair, if you're at a meeting, you've got your chair under the table, you can, oh, you can't see my foot there, but you can always just roll your ankles. But I have you doing it here now so that you can actually hold on to touch them. Because when you touch them, it helps them move even better. So give them a little rub. And then circle. And then go ahead and switch directions. And then stand on up. And again, take a little walk around. You can move the chair out of the way if you brought it to the center of your mat. Take a little walk around. So the ankles have a little more mobility. So let's go from the ankles to the knees. So we'll do one movement with the knees where you bend your knees and then you take them to the side, press them back, and take them to the other side. So side, and what I'm going is you bend the knees, take them to the left, straighten them out, bend them to the right. And again, straight to the side, straight to the side. And then you begin to circle. So as you're doing these circles, you might notice on me, you might feel on yourself, your ankles move. They have to. The other thing that moves in space is your hips. They're not moving relative to the pelvis too much, a little bit, but you're definitely moving in space. All right, other direction. One thing you might do to keep the kneecaps steady is you can put your fingers on them. So bend the knees, take them to the right, straighten them out, back to the left. Again, forward, to the right, straight, and back. And I may have said something confusing the first side. The only time you straighten them is when you take them back, not when you take them forward. So just going round and round, encouraging the thighs to stay parallel, the knees to stay parallel. Okay, so now go ahead and roll your shoulders. Let's go back to that. Round and round. Take a little walk around. I'm noticing the sun is coming my way, so I'm going to stand a little bit over to the side. All right, so now we've made it up a little higher to the hips. Let's go back to the hip circles we did at the very beginning, where you take your hips forward, go ahead to the left and back and to the right. Forward, left, back, right, and then smooth out that circle. Okay, from center, go the other direction. To the right, back, left, and forward. Right, back, left, and forward. And go ahead and smooth it out. Right, and then go ahead and take a little walk again. While you take a walk, I am going to slide the camera over just a little bit. So don't watch that. Okay. Come back from your walk. We're ready to meet again at the mat. So now we get to put the knee movement into action, where we're going to do some mobilization of the hips. Something I sometimes teach in yoga classes, but a lot of people don't always want to do it. So now you can do it in the privacy of your own home or wherever you're watching this. If you happen to be watching it at a wild and crazy party, I don't know how I feel about that, but can't do much about that because you can watch it wherever you want. Okay, so what we're going to do is take the pelvis forward and back, and if I was standing, my knees are bent. The only way I can take my pelvis forward and back is kind of turning into a banana and then leaning back, which I can't go very far. However, if you bend your knees, it's much easier to bring your pelvis forward and bring your pelvis back. So go ahead and encourage this movement. Take your hands on your pelvis. So you're actually feeling the movement coming from the pelvis. You don't need to squeeze your buttocks. You might find that it squeezes a little bit, but just forward and back, forward, back, forward, back. So of course, you know that means what's next is side to side. So feel your feet grounding, spine lengthening. Bring your hands onto your hips to help. So to lift the left hip, you're going to straighten the left leg a little and bend the right knee. And then second side. So the side you're tipping towards, the side you're lifting, is a knee that bends. Is a knee that gets straight. You go back and forth. Now, eventually, we begin to initiate the movement from the hip itself and the knee follows along. But if this is a little tricky for you, the way to start is by moving the knees. So to lift the left hip, the left leg straightens. To lift the right hip, the right leg straightens. So play around with it side to side. Can you create the movement more from the hip than from the knee? All right. And then you've got to know what's next, right? We're going to put it all together. So we start by taking the pelvis forward and then to the left leg straightens. Back, both knees bend. To the right leg straightens. So forward, both knees bent. Side, right knee straight. Back, both knees bend. Side, right leg straight. Try it on your own. Okay, now the fun part begins when you begin to smooth it out. Instead of those corners, just begin to go round and round. So as you'll notice that the knees move, the ankles move as you go round and round. But today, we encourage initiation from the thighs, from the hips. If that doesn't feel like makes sense to you, then you can go a little from the knees more, like I said. Okay, we'll come back to center. Other direction. Hooray! Bend the knees again. Take your hips forward. To the right. Back. To the left. Forward. Right. Back. Left. Forward. Right. Back. Left. All the while keeping stability in the upper body. That's part of the isolation, which gives you much more freedom of movement. So when you differentiate the movement of the legs and the hips, everything flows better. You walk better. So this is not just about getting your groove on for the dance floor. It's about helping you walk, helping you sit, helping you just move with overall greater comfort, joy, ease, and freedom, like I talk about often. Good. Okay. Go ahead and let that go. Release your shoulders. Breathe. Find your chair again. Maybe bring your hands onto the lower part of the chair. Walk your feet backwards. And then take a step forward. So that circling move we just did is something that's done in a lot of dances that are very earth-based, and it has names. In Hawaiian, for example, this is called an ami, where you circle the hips, what we just did. So next, we're going to do a little bit more movement, a little more complicated, which is drawing the hips in a figure 8. So to start with that, we're going to start with your knees bent. And let me show you what it looks like first, before we actually do it. So we're looking like this. We're just drawing a figure 8. You can watch my finger going in the 8. And that's what we're going to break it down a little. Okay, so to break it down, bend your knees. Go ahead and lift your left hip up like we've been doing, but now bring it a little forward. Okay, let's do that again. So lift the left hip, bring it forward. So if you remember, you lift the left hip, the left leg straightens a bit, the right knee bends. Now, this is a shift. We take the left hip and move it diagonally to the right. As you do that, bend the right knee, left knee. Oh, I'm sorry, I got confused. Bend your left knee as you straighten the right leg. So here we go again. So we're going to start. You bend your right knee, left leg goes straight. Bring your left hip forward, and then shift the legs. So begin to bend the left knee, straighten the right leg. Now we're going to come around the other side. Begin to take your right hips forward, and then move your right hip diagonally to the left. As you do that, bend your right knee, straighten your left leg. Maybe you're getting it now. Bring your hip forward, and then shift the legs. The hip goes to the right as you straighten the right leg. Bring the right hip forward. The hip goes to move the hips towards the left as you straighten the left leg. So for those of you who have done this and do it comfortably, it's actually sometimes nice to slow it down. Now and then build it up. So now you might begin to practice taking it around. Just moving slow. We encourage. At first when you go, you'll probably find your upper body's moving with you. But then you can begin to work towards isolating it, keeping the upper body steady as the lower body moves. So getting those figure 8s going. All right, take a moment, take a break, roll your shoulders. And now let's go the other direction. So we led first with the left hip going forward. Now we're going to lead with the right hip, because for pretty much all of us, it's very different on the two sides. So start by bending your knees and straighten the right leg, lift the right hip, and then bring the right hip over to the left. Oops, sorry, I find this way easier too, so it took me a moment. We went that way, now we're going to go this way, so different way. So what I want you to do is straighten your right leg and then bring your right hip back. As you do that, bend your right knee, straighten the left leg. The left leg goes back, left hip goes back. Straighten the right knee. Right hip goes back. Straighten the left knee. Left hip goes back. So this is more figure eights going backwards as opposed to forwards. And then again, you can go slow, and you let your upper body move to start with you. And then begin to slow it down and isolate the movement. So it's just in the lower body, not in the upper body. I'm just gently touching my sternum to encourage my upper body to stay steady. Okay, that's a lot of hip movements. Let's take the shoulder roll and a few breaths. So inhale, take your arms up. Exhale, release. And again, inhale. Exhale. One more time. Inhale. And exhale. Take your legs wide now. Time for big asana. Reach from the center of your sternum out wide. Bring your hands to your hips. Now we get to do the hip circles bigger. Not the figure eight crazy ones, just circles. Where you take your pelvis forward, to the left, to the back, to the right. And again, this one you might feel how much when you move your pelvis, your torso goes the opposite direction. Right? To the left, back, the torso goes forward. When you take your hips to the right, the torso goes to the left. And then smooth it out so you get nice big circles. Kind of get full range of movement in the hip joint. Okay, and now the other way. So let's start by hinging forward at the hips. Take your hips to the left, forward, right, and back. Round and round a few times. And then walk your feet together. Stand for a moment again, mountain pose. Feet grounding, spine lengthening. Try your chin back, get a little more length in your spine. Spread your fingers, roll your palms. And then turn to face your chair. Take your legs wide. Bring your hands to your hips. Lift the hip sockets up and over your thigh bones. Now you've created a little more differentiation of movement of how the leg moves in the hip joint. Take your hands forward. Just get that length. Breathe. And then to come up, bend your knees, bring your hands to your hips. Inhale, come up. Walk your feet back towards each other. And now let's see, how does this feel if you bring it into a more classic yoga pose? So let's say warrior two. We take our legs wide in warrior two. Arms wide for a moment. Take a moment, big asana. And then bring your hands to your hips. Turn from your thigh now, just from the thigh, not from the pelvis, not from the foot. Turn your thigh bone, which is your hip of the back leg in. Turn your left thigh out. Keep your spine long, and then begin to deepen the crease at the top of the front thigh. and come back up a few times, up and down. So by doing all these circles, we've created more mobility in the hips. Not necessarily a huge, not looking for the flexibility, but looking for the ability for the thigh bone to move in the hip socket to move around the thigh bone. That's what gives us the freedom of movement, which actually helps the back as well. All right, next time you come down, straighten the arms, warrior two. Play with it a little bit. Look out over your arm. Breathe. And then press down with the back leg, come back up. You can keep your arms up if you want that challenge. Anytime you feel tension here, take your arms down. Let them release, roll the shoulders. Second side. Roll in the left thigh, roll out the right thigh. Inhale, arms up. Actually, let's bring the hands on the hips and bend and straighten a few times. Feeling the movement, mobility, range of movement. So these poses, this kind of standing pose is nice for having that expression of the range of movement and developing the strength. So you hold the position, the body in a position where the hip is not what it's usually in when you walk or sit. And then holding it helps it get stronger. So we don't want to just have the mobility, we want to have the strength with the mobility at the same time. Take your arm on up, breathe. And then come on up. Turn the leg forward. Now your choice, you can fold forward all the way to the floor or onto the chair. Hip sockets up and over your thigh bones. Hinge forward and release. Find a distance where your feet are not slipping. You can open up in the hip joint. A little longer exhalation. And then when you're ready to come up, bend your knees a little. You might need to walk your feet a little closer together. I sure do. Bring your hands to your hips. Come on up. All right, mountain pose. See, you didn't need any yoga props. Okay, a chair, but you don't absolutely need a chair. Just your body, a place to stand, a place to move and groove. So, thank you for watching. Of course, if you have any questions, please let me know. Take a nice full breath. Exhale. May our hips be happier and healthy as we move and groove throughout the world. Namaste. All right, so as you saw, this was a practice where we didn't need to get down on the floor. We didn't do a lot of stretching. We did a lot of what really is mobilization. A lot of times moving the pelvis around the thigh bone. Often in the yoga practices, especially, we do things where we're moving the legs a lot as opposed to moving the pelvis. So it's good to do both to get that range of mobility. So my intention here is to show you different ways you can move the hips and to have fun with it. Like at first, I know for some people these movements are not natural, but the more you play with it, the easier it gets. My plan is to make another video of this with a little bit more, more movements. I don't want to call them anything else, just more, like going this way and some other things that you can do with once you get your groove going in the hips. All right, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, let me know. And I will say aloha. Thanks for watching.